like to welcome you to Norberline's Transforming Problems. This is every single Monday through the month of November and the December 6th. It's taught by Rachel. And hang on, I've got to get your Ryer. Is that correct? Fantastic. And we're going to spend some wonderful time this month together, 9 to 7 p.m. Thank you so much, Rachel, for coming out and spending the evenings with us.
You're welcome. So do I start with the prayers, or do you want
I can share. One moment.
We have them on the,
Those are the dedication ones that we do at the end.
Pardon me.
That's okay. So we're going to do this briefly, and welcome to everyone. And then we'll go into some more introductions. But traditionally, anytime we do something as important as listening to the Dharma, we use our first motivation to set our intention and create the causes for the listening itself to be of benefit to ourselves and others. So we'll do this short prayer in English one time, and then 2 times in Tibetan, and the phonetics are there on the screen as well. So we'll start with the English. And if you're not comfortable with your hands in the prayer mudra, it's perfectly fine to do whatever is comfortable for you. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodang sogi chognam la changchu pardu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gi pe sonam gi drola penchir sangye drupar sho. Sangye chodang sogi chognam la changchu pardu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gi pe sonam gi drola penchir sangye drupar sho. Thank you, Shayla. So, welcome everybody. I'm going to hopefully get to know you over the course of the next few weeks. And I see 1 or 2 familiar names, maybe not faces yet, but it's nice to see those of you I already know, and I look forward to meeting those of you I don't know. I want to make this a bit of a community and have some interaction with each other so that we can have the benefit of the Sangha. So traditionally, when we take this refuge prayer, we're talking about the Arya Sangha, those people who already have attained enlightenment. But particularly in the last 1.5 years, I've learned more about the need for Sangha, the benefits of having community. So taking Sangha from the high beings that have realized the wisdom of their own minds and the reality of how things actually exist. Taking that to those of us who are practicing together, learning together, and being in community. I think especially in the West, where we haven't grown up in Buddhism, we've come to it often from other traditions. We're missing that community, that the basis of communal practice. And so my hope is that this also becomes a space that is conducive for us to become friends and community together. So we have the benefit of having a couple of people working to present this course. It's being presented through Tupten Norbaling, the Buddhist Center here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Since Shayla is hosting us and helping me out, I didn't ask her, but I'm assuming that if I miss something in the chat, she might bring it to my attention if there's a question or something like that. So if you do have questions, you can always write them in the chat. And if you don't know how to do that, you can open your mic and ask us how to do that. But most people know how to do that by now. So I won't go over things that are second nature to us. Discovering Buddhism, I want to go through and briefly introduce myself. I'm a longtime student of the Dharma. I started studying Buddhism seriously in 1986 in Bodh Gaya in the Antioch International Studies program there with some fabulous teachers such as Chukini Rinpoche and Trungpa Rinpoche, along with Manindraji and the Vipassana, the different tradition. And Robert Thurman was my advisor in college, the randomly assigned advisor in college. Robert Thurman was my professor. So I came to it through academia and then practice, and eventually was introduced to FPMT. Actually, my first night in India in 1986 at 3 a.m, I was introduced to FPMT, but that's a whole other story. So FPMT stands for the Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition, and is the worldwide organization that is was founded by Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche in the 70s. FPMT is situated within the Tibetan Buddhism within His Holiness the Dalai Lama's sphere. So we really do consider His Holiness the Dalai Lama our teacher. So we request that everything that we do be honoring his wishes. I have come to teaching this course through my time at Maitripa College in Portland, Oregon, which is a Western adaptation of the Geshe curriculum, and I got a master's degree with the first set of students to attend Maitripa College back in 2006 through 2009. And then studied for another 7 years with Yangtze Rinpoche and all the other fabulous teachers that would come through Maitripa College. At some point along the way, Yangtze Rinpoche asked me to start teaching Discovering Buddhism. And I did that there at Maitripa College very nervously at first. And then Tashida, my meditation center in Dharamsala, asked me to come and teach their introductory courses, which are 10-day meditation courses. So it's condensing all of the Discovering Buddhism program into a meditation course. But I haven't been teaching for a while, so or I haven't been teaching Buddhism for a while. I teach math currently to middle schoolers during the day. So when you see me next week, expect me to look exhausted. They take more out of me than I have. And so I'm going to share my screen and go into the material now and stop talking about myself, because I could do that forever, which is not necessarily a good quality. And really, I liked how this course was presented, that really it's about our happiness, and we all want happiness, whether we want it or not. We all want happiness, whether we know it or not. We really we are engaged in happiness seeking, and we often make mistakes about what causes us to be happy in our striving to be happy. And so this course is about how we use a very in Buddhism to reframe. Oh dear. To reframe. Let me know if my connection is poor, and it's telling me to ask someone to mute or unmute. Do you have a question?
No, if you run your cursor over, that will pop up.
Okay. So what I was just saying was, this is to reframe when we have a problem, to reframe it so that we actually use every moment of our brief lives to the highest potential of that, and bring everything to the point of happiness. So even what we consider as very difficult problems become the source of true happiness. And this is not, Buddhism should not be about superimposing extra layers on top of reality, unless you're faking till you make it, kind of. That's a different thing. But so most of the time when we want to engage in the study of Buddhism, it's not to force ourselves into something that doesn't really exist for us, like making a smile on a face that's when you feel really, really distressed. It's not that type of happiness that we're looking at. We're really looking at the underlying causes of happiness and how to get there, even when things are not going the way we want them to, which is pretty much all the time. Yeah, or pretty much all the time. So the overview that I'm showing right now is just tonight's of what I'm hoping that we get through. We'll see how my estimation of time has gone. The motivation is important. And motivation and dedication is what we do every single time. And that's to wrap it all up and seal it from any problems, seal it from any obstacles, for it to kind of come to the result that we want. And the highest result that we really want is to transform our minds into our highest potential. Our minds in Buddhism are known to have the highest potential of becoming enlightened, which includes omniscience, a great deal of power, unbelievable compassion and love for every single, without exception, every single living, sentient, feeling being everywhere, beyond our counting. All of those sentient beings, countless. And the introduction really that I want to give is some sort of a context for this, this training of what's called lojong, or mind training. Lo is the Tibetan word for mind. And it means many things. It means awareness. It means wind. It means the energy that is the basis of our mind. Mind is the object of an intense study in Buddhism and in Tibetan Buddhism in particular these days. Tibetan Buddhism, of course, originated with the Buddha in India and was influenced by the Chinese interpretation of Buddhism a little bit, but also the you could say native culture of Tibet before the Indian culture of Buddhism mixed with it. And so the cultural context that this is coming to us through is a way that it has been preserved. It's a way that the authentic tradition of India and of Buddhism that manifest in some of the most outstanding monastic academic institutions the world has ever known, 1,000 years with hundreds of thousands of monks and students dominating this landscape of Buddhism, Buddhist thought for quite some time. It's a conversation that we're entering that has been going on for thousands of years. And Buddha didn't arise from nothing. Buddha arose in the soil of Indian thought and philosophy. And so we can even say that this is a conversation that started before the Buddha. And so what we're entering is an investigation, a series of experiments, personal lives that were dedicated to studying, understanding, and manifesting within their own mind these realizations, generation after generation after generation for thousands of years. And this is quite precious. And we often in the West, we just come to it and say, oh, it's just Buddhism, but we have no clue that this is like 3,000 years worth of a conversation that we're engaging with. And so really the next the context is this conversation about happiness. And I came to realize it a little bit clearer when I was teaching social studies to some 6th graders and had to teach them about Buddhism. And it was framed as, answering the question, what is happiness? And I had never thought of Buddhism as answering the question, what is happiness? So we've talked a little bit about each of these points that I wanted to make, but I want to say one more thing that I didn't write here, which is about the specific context of lojong is within the practices of a bodhisattva. And so I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, so forgive me if I'm repeating something you know, but for a bodhisattva to be a bodhisattva, they already have quite a background, either through study or through practice or through service or self-sacrifice, always all of that based in their intention and motivation. And the bodhisattva is different from other types of aspiring Buddhas. So in Buddhism, you can have different motivations to become a Buddha. You can want to become a Buddha so that you get happiness for yourself to the highest extent possible, so that you're no longer subject to suffering. Or you can, to put it really in a dichotomy, which we like in the West, or you can have the idea that you're going to serve others by transforming your own mind to the greatest extent possible. And that would be the Bodhisattva motivation. Bodhicitta is another way of saying this. Bodhicitta is the mind. Chitta means mind. Bodhi means enlightened. So the mind of enlightenment. And bodhicitta is what the mind of a bodhisattva, the being who has the awakened mind or the enlightened mind. And these are Sanskrit words, bodhisattva and bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, if you really break it down, has two parts: the desire to become enlightened and the desire to benefit others. So we say it in a phrase like this. The bodhicitta is the mind wishing to become enlightened in order to benefit all sentient beings. And so there's this important quality which makes this an incredibly vast and profound practice. Anything that you do with this mind becomes a vast and profound practice because of the number of other beings and other sentient beings. Pardon me if I grimace, I'm having a toe cramp. Lovely. But I will take on the suffering of this toe cramp in order to become enlightened for the benefit of other sentient beings, right? This is part of transforming. This is part of how we're going to learn transforming problems such as toe cramps and pain into everyday happiness by making it meaningful beyond our wildest dreams. So my toe cramp becomes the vehicle through which I expand my heart, encompass others, take on the suffering of all those millions of beings that are experiencing toe cramps at this very moment. Oh, and just as I say that, my toe cramps disappear, which is the side effect of Tonglen. So, okay. I'm going to stop my rambling, and I hope that it's beneficial rambling for you. And I'm going to suggest that we do something together, that we do what is called an Enquiry Tool that comes through the Foundation for Developing Compassion and Wisdom, which is the secular ethics, the secular branch of FPMT. It's a tool that we can use to go deeply into one question or topic. And my goal in presenting this to you is to ask you to really take on let's see, we're going to do this, and we'll go back to the previous screen in just a moment. But we're going to do this in like 3 steps. We're going to look at identifying some potential real problem that you're having. Like I just had toe cramps and it was quite painful. And then that would be an actual problem I was experiencing, right? So we're going to collectively just brainstorm problems. And I think for this tonight, I'll use a whiteboard and you guys can try drawing on it. But if that doesn't work, you can put it in the chat and we'll read all these out loud. It's kind of as anonymous as you want it to be. But what kinds of potential or actual problems or challenges or obstacles are we facing, so that we're making this real? Because as I have learned the hard way through teaching young people, you can only learn something starting where you are. So let's start where we are. What are the problems and challenges that we face? So I'm gonna share this whiteboard that I have. And if you want, you pick up a pencil, and I believe you can write on it. If you can't write on it, I'll take notes and you can see them. So go ahead and unmute and tell me what problems you're facing, or type them in the chat.
Well, I'll start. I have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, so chronic sprains in all my body's joints, and autism, so I deal with meltdowns.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to put my toe cramps in there. Go ahead. Anyone else want to share?
Asking for help.
Asking for help? All right.
But
Obstacle.
dealing with temperamental colleague.
And spelling, if I might say so. Yes?
We have one
Yes.
in the chat box, coming off a weekend of feeling really ill. That's from Barbara.
Yeah, especially when you want to relax and then you have to spend all your weekend feeling ill. I totally understand that one. So just
I'll add mine. Mine is I'm exhausted after a week of in and out of the emergency room with my mother. And it just seems like it'll never end.
This one probably fits with what Shayla just said. Dealing with complex medical problems.
I think the feeling that it will never end is also part of that, right?
Mhm.
It makes my toe cramps look like nothing, right? I'm already thinking of others and seeing others' pain, and the way that we individually experience a small portion of all of this suffering.
Rachel,
There's
we have
more.
another one in the chat box.
Wonderful.
Kim says, tendency to shun people who refuse to get vaccinated.
Okay. I'm going to copy this from this screen and see. Oops.
I'll add mine, but I don't know how to word it. That's why I'm kind of reluctant. I'm relieved that I've backed away from a difficult situation. But I'm wondering how Bodhisattva like that is.
You're relieved at the end of a difficult situation, and I just
I had to back away from a difficult situation. I'm relieved about it, but I'm thinking that it's not very Bodhisattva-like. Be relieved. would take a mountain of explanation.
I apologize to everyone else. I seem to have erased all of our problems.
That's excellent. That's very good.
Yes.
I like that.
Yay!
Perfect.
They're all gone.
You
We're all
don't need to
happy.
teach anymore.
We're done. We've accomplished our goal. We now have happiness. All of our problems have been erased. They're transformed. We're done. Very good. And it's all due to the fact that you are backing away from a difficult situation and not acting like a bodhisattva. What else can we say?
There you go.
Good. Well, this is a very interesting thing, this idea. The two feeling things that I remember hearing from this group so far are feeling it will never end and feeling like you're relieved, except for the fact that you don't feel you're living up to being a bodhisattva. So the feeling like it will never end and being relieved to not have difficulties are totally antithetical to the bodhisattva. You're right. You're absolutely right. The bodhisattva doesn't have that feeling of I to have the relief. There's no I that needs that relief more than the service that they are offering to the others. And it's also the bodhisattva's feeling that they are so brave. This is why you'll see me type in brave practitioner. They're so brave that they consider taking on all the suffering of endless amounts, countless beings. And so it will never end. From our perspective, it will never end how much a bodhisattva will burden themselves with in order to train their mind, in order to develop the mind of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And this is a very delicate point. It's something that we as Westerners are, we need to be a bit careful about, because we jump into things without really investigating, without really understanding the endless quality of the bodhisattva practice or the commitment that takes and the context that it's in. And so we don't access the resources and the supports that the bodhisattvas can access, but we also don't understand the commitment of it. So, and that's a process, it doesn't matter if you have a good heart and you enter into something and then you find out more about it and you realize you can't do it quite the way you want to. We have to find a way to be good to ourselves in the midst of all of this as well. And not push our minds to the melting points that we sometimes do. When we take on more than we can really accomplish. I speak from personal experience on this one. I take on too much and then have failed to accomplish it, and in my past. So understand. On the other hand, the way that we learn how to carry more is to push our limit and push our comfort zones beyond where we think it's possible. And so it's this reality check. Can I do it? Do I want to try to do it even though I can't do it yet? And so this is part of the bodhisattva picture that is part of the context for this mind training practice that we're going to investigate. And we're going to need to have the ability to look at it in its context, because some of it is very radical. And if you were to actually put it into practice the way it's written, again, speaking from personal experience, you can ruin your reputation. You can destroy your way of being in the world in a way that may not lead you where you actually need to go with it all. So it takes a lot of wisdom. It takes a lot of self-knowledge. It takes a lot of being willing to contextualize and keep straight what is my motivation and my intention, and what do I show to the world and what do I keep to myself. So we'll get to that over the course of this 6 weeks as well. But today we're going to do some more of the PowerPoint here and go into this tool called Enquiry and investigate a little bit more this process. So we're going to pair up, and so Shayla is going to count how many of us there are, and then she, when we're ready, we're not quite ready, she'll put us into pairs. And what you're going to do is you're going to take on one of two roles and then switch after a certain amount of time. So you'll be working with the same question, and the first role is to ask the question, and the other role is to respond to the question. So one person is asking one question repeatedly. So an inquiry tool is really asking you to be of service to the other person if you're asking, and to be paying attention to the deeper parts of yourself when you are answering. So first we need to make sure everybody's clear about the answer. Then we'll get into pairs. You'll decide who's going to start asking questions and who's going to answer them. And then after 3 minutes, we'll switch roles, and the person that was answering will ask the question. How do we ask the question? So if I'm asking you, what gives you trouble in your life? I'm going to model the participant A who's repeatedly asking this same question. What gives you trouble in this life? Someone answers, my cat. What gives you trouble in this life? My dog. What gives you trouble in this life? And you keep asking the same question. You acknowledge, sometimes you nod, sometimes you say, oh yeah, I understand that. Or you acknowledge, you actively listen, repeating something back only if necessary. But basically your job as participant A is to ask the question over and over and over and over again, without judgment and with presence. Okay? Then the person answering is at each time listening for that surprising, unexpected answer, that whatever arises, and just saying it without worrying too much. It's a self-discovery process for that person answering the question. So you're looking for things that are less than conscious to kind of start bubbling to the surface, because you're doing the same question over and over again. Does that make sense? Any questions about the process? So we'll switch roles, do it again, and then there'll be an extra minute or two to kind of wrap up any kind of loose ends or anything you need to. So we'll take a minute at the beginning, 3 minutes, a few seconds to switch, and another 3 minutes and another minute. So it comes out to be something like 8 minutes or so. All right, that will do this this process. And the question is, we've already kind of done the what gives you trouble in this life, but what I want you to ask is, who is behind this trouble? So from our brainstorm, thinking of one problem now. So before we go into this, you'll go in with your problem in your head. As little as toe cramps and as big as in and out of emergency rooms with your mother. Whatever problem you want to investigate, what the question is who is behind this? Who is causing the trouble? Okay. Any questions about the question? Shayla, are you ready to break us into breakout rooms?
I am.
And do you have a timer on it, or shall I do that?
I can time it.
Thank you. And does it give you a way to kind of send anything to anybody?
I'll find out. I have written down the question.
We don't know if you can do this, but I will type into the chat. Type into the chat. Who is behind this trouble? Okay. So you can copy that and then repeat that question. All right, let's try it. Here we go. Hi, welcome back. I see smiles. That's a good sign.
Thank you, Barbara.
That's a very good sign. So one of the things that I said we would do, but I didn't say it out loud, was to debrief, right? To collect any insights or discuss any questions or put up a question that we might come back to discuss later. Was this process something that revealed something to you by going through the deepening of this question of who's behind the problem? Yes, Barbara.
I am partnered with Doris. And both Doris and I have taken quite a few classes through Thupten Norbuling. And we knew the answer before we even entered the exercise. But I guess what I learned is, even though I know the answer, it's still difficult. So that was my takeaway.
Good. Nice. Knowing this kind of academic knowing that we're used to in school isn't the same as heart knowing, right? And having it become a part of our life. And this practice of lojong isn't about the academic knowing at all. It's about the heart. It's about becoming so steeped in something that it's part of your being, right? When you are practicing as a bodhisattva and you're taking these 8 verses to heart, it's not an academic exercise of, oh, I know the answer. I know the answer, right?
If I may clarify, it's Doris speaking. All I can see is the screen share, so I don't know if people can see me. It wasn't an academic discussion. There were tears. Although at the end of it, we acknowledged that we got to the answer, I think in the right way, if I may say, Rachel. It was kind of like a light bulb moment at the end, more so than it was going into it knowing what the answer was. We got to the answer. It's the way I would say it.
That sounds pretty good. Well, thank you for participating. Thank you for attempting it and going beyond the academics of it and going through it. Thank you so much. Do you have something else, Barbara?
I was just going to say that both Doris and I admitted initially how uncomfortable we were with doing this exercise. But yet proud of ourselves for getting out of our comfort zone and sticking with it. And it was very beneficial, even though, like Doris said, we knew what the answer was.
Mm-hmm.
It was still very helpful.
Okay. Thank you. So this is kind of the next question, and I don't think we'll go and do it again because I don't want to take that whole process again for the next question, but is what we've just done is looked at who is behind a problem. Well, what is the root cause of the problem is the next thought process that one might go through. And if you have somebody at home that you want to do this inquiry process with and think about a problem, and then what's the actual root cause? So not just who, but what's the root cause of the problem? And so it's really going through the process of identifying causes of things. And if you have been studying at Tubten Norberling and you say you know the answer, I can imagine more than one answer, but the root cause of problems, when we look at a problem, we don't see the root cause. We see, I'm sitting cross-legged, or I have some problem with my joint, or I have that's why I have pain in my toe, or we put it to a very surface level cause. But any problem, and what we're going to see in this course is that any problem has the same root cause. All of them, all the problems. And so this secret question, what is the root cause of the problem, is actually applicable to all problems.
Rachel, we have two messages. Susan says,
So
I'm still here.
how do you, yes.
And
Yes.
she also wants to know, can you also say, what is this trouble?
Sure. The what is being this trouble, or I've been in inquiries where people totally change the question completely. If you feel like it's the wrong question, and it's good to ask a similar question or adapt it a little bit. But what is being this trouble? Instead of who is behind this trouble, it changes it slightly, but you can definitely do it. You can definitely do it, and it might come up with an equally informative process like Doris and Barbara are describing.
And last, Linda said she was booted out of the Zoom room, and Linda, I apologize.
So it's not necessarily you did it, but the root of the problem could be investigated. The root cause for being booted out of the breakout rooms could be investigated. And eventually, we would come to the same answer that in Buddhism is that all problems come down to the root cause, and the root cause of everything is embedded in our delusions, our distracting emotions, these afflictive emotions, these emotions that take over and dictate how we behave. And the root cause of those afflictive emotions that cause us suffering, either immediately or down the road. The root cause of all of that is the misidentification of self. And this topic of the misidentification of self is something that is easy to learn the words and just say them, but it takes years of inquiry. It takes years of listening to presentations about it. It takes years of analyzing and attempting to look at from different perspectives, and then finally to make it one's own. So this question of the root cause is the philosophical basis of Buddhism, you might even say. It's the looking for the nature of reality, really, in its manifestation form. So how do we actually experience what we're experiencing? What's the root cause of any of our experiences? Except for enlightenment and enlightenment, then the cause can't be the root cause of suffering. But in any other mixed result, there will be that misidentification of self. So I wanted to go into from this inquiry and exploration and experiment and making it personal to each of us as much as we can. This I, which is empty of inherent existence, was nevertheless abandoned in the dark room. Oh, Elizabeth, I'm so sorry you were abandoned in the dark room of the breakout room, or
Yes, it
was
doesn't
this a
matter.
childhood experience?
No. The person I was with just sort of disappeared, so I don't know. It was maybe the nakedness of the unadorned question being asked over and over again. I don't know. Maybe it was the voice. Anyway, it's taken in good spirit. So.
Well, thank you for your good spirit. If you ever encounter the black room again and want to try again, you can leave the breakout room, come back to the main room, and we can reassign you to another one.
It was nice and cozy anyway.
Yes, sometimes it is perfect what happens. So, are there any other questions or experiences before we move on? I'm gonna switch over to the next section and talk about the materials. So I'm assuming that you all have access to the website. That is how you got here to this room. And in that website presentation of this course, there's also a link to materials. And in those materials, we have a document written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama on the 8 verses of thought transformation. So within that document, there are those 8 verses written by Longri Tangpa. And then there's a presentation called The Mahayana Thought Transformation by Lama Zopa Rinpoche and When Problems Come by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Then there's a suggestion to also read in the following 3 books: The Wish-Fulfilling Golden Sun, The Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, and Transforming Problems into Happiness. All wonderful texts. And then the practice text is through the foundation store of FPMT, which is a Chenrezig practice. And we'll be doing some of that in Tonglen, form of Tonglen. So I don't know people's circumstances. Some people are very busy working and don't have a lot of reading time outside of class. If you were trying to take this course for the credit, you would want to read and absorb as much as you could around this topic. But if you don't have time, there's no shame or anything of just coming to the class itself. So the 8 verses of thought transformation are very well known. Apparently they have made their way to the Chinese canon and all over the place. I was just speaking with a practitioner in the Zen tradition. So he was quoting them from, it seemed like a Chinese source. I was a little confused. But Langri Tangpa is presenting these 8 verses as a way of presenting the paramita yana. Well, the paramita is the Sanskrit word for perfection, that's translated as perfection or perfections. And yana is a vehicle. So it's the way of practicing the perfections. And so when we talk about bodhisattvas practicing to become Buddhas, one of the ways of organizing their practices is in the 6 or 10 perfections. And the ordinarily we talk about the 6 perfections more. And those 6 perfections are generosity, ethical discipline, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. And so wisdom is the deciding factor. If you try to practice generosity without wisdom, and here wisdom means the wisdom realizing emptiness, without the understanding of the nature of reality, of the true way in which things exist without inherent existence, without permanence, without being separate, solid, self-sufficient, sort of some self separated from others. If you don't have that understanding in imbibing the process of generosity, it's still beneficial, but it's not the same benefit. It's not a perfection of generosity. So a perfection of generosity would be done in the state of mind understanding emptiness or interdependent origination. The perfection of ethical discipline would be engaging in ethical behavior with the mind, totally in the state of wisdom or understanding that I do not exist the way I appear, but I exist without inherent existence. I exist as a dependent origination. And yet I'm doing this act of generosity or ethical discipline or patience or joyous effort or concentration. And so the presentation of these 8 verses is divided into method and wisdom. So method being the skillful means of loving kindness and bodhichitta. All of the first 7 verses are focused on how to do this practice or how to do this thought transformation. And then the last verse falls into the category of wisdom, understanding the nature of reality. And these are, in the Lam Rim, these are the practices of a Bodhisattva. If you want to develop bodhicitta, if you want to actually practice as a Bodhisattva, these are the things that you will do. So now I'm mixing it up again, and I want to prepare you for the first verse. So I want to ask you this question. What does it mean when you hold someone dear? I said to someone last night, I said, you are dear. What does it mean when you say you hold someone dear? And who do you hold dear? And why do you hold them dear? And I thought for this, maybe a journal process would be nice. So I didn't ask you at the beginning to have pen and paper handy, but if you have pen and paper handy, we might take maybe a few minutes. I like when I assign writing, I was teaching English language arts up until October, and then I switched to teaching mathematics to middle school, 7th and 8th grade. But I would have them do a just right. I would have them have the question or the topic in their mind and just write, sort of like we just did with the enquiry, but this time with yourself. So those of you who don't like to physically write, you could speak into one of those speech to text things, or you could talk to the window. I mean, you could do it any way you want, but it's just with yourself. And if you needed to take a break, this would be a perfect time. Then go to the bathroom and talk to yourself while you're doing what you need to do. Get a drink of water. But just spend a little bit of time. What does it mean to you to hold someone dear? Who do you hold dear? Why do you hold them dear? Let's take 5 minutes to do that. And then we'll share what we want to share, not what we don't want to share. Okay. All right. So we could come back to our collective space and see what we have together. What is it that you mean when you hold someone dear? What do you hold dear? Why do you hold that dear? I'm going to do the whiteboard thing again, and this time try to save it instead of erase it. So go ahead and type in the chat or call out. What is it that you would like to share from what you thought about, wrote? You don't have to share everything that you wrote. You can just choose something. So
Susan has said in chat, we value them.
we value them.
Yes.
Okay. In my example from last night, the person had just given me something that I wanted, something that felt positive and healing. So I was grateful and felt the dearness of their concern. So it was like I had received a gift. And then that made them dear to me.
And Barbara says, I love and admire them. I'll add mine. Mine is the ability to walk into a room and instantly change the energy. So just say the ability to make people laugh and love fiercely.
Anyone else?
Gestures from others letting them know that they care about me.
Did I catch it, Linda? So when we value or make someone, when we admire someone or love them, or they bring joy into the room, or love or laughter, or change energy into lightness, or bring us gifts, or make us laugh, or show they care, we call them dear. We hold them dear. Our first verse in the 8 verses. And did my screen shift? Do you see that, or do you see the same? The first verse in this is not the verse. The first verse is that there we go. Determined to accomplish all success, I shall always practice holding dear all sentient beings who are more precious than the wish-fulfilling gems. And we'll just start. We're just starting on this one. We won't finish it necessarily tonight. Maybe we'll finish it, most of it, but I wasn't assuming that we would. But I wanted to say holding dear is where I wanted to start with, and that's the verse, determined to accomplish all success, meaning determined to become a Buddha. I shall always practice holding dear all sentient beings who are more precious than wish-fulfilling gems. And this is going to go beyond what we think of holding people that we like dear, people that benefit us, people that are friends. There are, in Buddhism, and probably many of you have already heard this presentation in one form or another, but there are 3 types of persons that we relate to. And pretty much anybody, any sentient being falls into these 3 categories. And person can be a mosquito here. Person can be an alien from another planet here. Person can be anything that has a sentient system. So we get a little bit dicey when we talk about plants or fungi being persons, but just about everything else that moves and breathes and has a nervous system, for sure, is a person. And we are in 3 relationships to that person. Either we consider them dear and near, or we consider them serious challenges to our patients. Like, we don't like them. We it's often called enemy, but that's sort of like not part of our everyday experience in a lot of our lives in the West. We don't have literal enemies all the time, but people who challenge our patience, mosquitoes that come and want to like buzz around our ears all night long, mice that are crawling in our cabinets, and people that really grade us the wrong way would fall into this category. Challenging our patience, pushing us to the point where we don't feel that they are dear, right? And then there's all these people we never meet, and we have no real connection with them. Most of the time when I meet somebody, they fall into one of these two other categories. They don't stay in the unknown category. They're not the strangers. When I meet someone, I think most of us do this. We instantly categorize them. Oh, they're my friend, or oh, they're not my friend. Right? So the unknown others are the ones that we're not aware of, the ones that we don't meet even briefly, and we don't consider, and we don't think of, and we may be very intimate with them. They may be the ants crawling on our pillows at night, but we don't pay any attention to them and have no concept of them one way or another. So these three types of persons then encompass all sentient beings, because we're talking not just our friends here. So again, we can talk about our comfort zone a little bit and say, are you brave enough to take on the suffering of someone that is your friend? Like, and when I say, when we talk about taking on the suffering, we mean taking it away from them and experiencing it yourself. Would you actually be willing to? And this question may be something that you answer differently on different days. But are you brave enough to take on someone else's suffering? And what level of comfort do you actually have with that? That's going to be the test of their dearness to you, right? So in the first verse, it's saying, I will hold them dear. And like someone who's dear, you'd be instantly more willing to take away their suffering or create a situation where they were not just dear in name only, but dear in action, right? So what I'd like to do is to lead us through a very simplified version of what's called Tonglen, which is two Tibetan words that mean taking and giving. And in the practice of taking and giving, you always start by taking on the suffering, taking away the suffering from someone. So we'll get to the giving at a different point, but to build on this idea of the dear ones and understanding how we relate to these three types of persons, I wanted to do a little bit more of an experiential sort of exercise. So if you would like to sit in a meditative posture and close your eyes. And if you don't have to. If you want to turn off your camera for this, you're welcome to. But imagine in front of you someone you hold dear, someone you wrote about or thought about during our short break. And imagine they're actually in front of you. So have the sensation in your body that you would have when you're in their presence. What feelings you have in your mind, your heart, your physical being. And they have a small pain, a toe cramp, or a little bit of a headache, or it's a little bit of whatever that is, carpal tunnel, stomach ache. They have a little bit of some discomfort, and imagine that you could take that on and feel that in your own body, and they would not have it. How would it feel to do that? Would you feel okay? Would you be willing to do that? And this same person, your love for them is rekindled and the pain has gone away. You took it and it dissipated. And now they're sitting in front of you and they're closer to agony. They're really feeling depressed about something, or have a great deal of pain somewhere in their physical being. And if you knew that the pain was going to be temporary, would you be able to take it from them for a short period of time? Relieve them of their suffering, mental or physical. Take it on, feeling it, experiencing it yourself? Or is that too much already? And you'd comfort them from a distance. It's your choice. And their pain dissipates, and your pain, if you felt their pain, dissipates. And you just are enjoying their company. And you invite them to sit on your left side, just next to you, that feeling of comfort warming your shoulder. And you're going to need that, because the next person to sit in front of you is that person that really tests you. So actually imagine the person you put in that category. They're sitting in front of you, they're doing their normal thing, and your hairs on the back of your neck are starting to go up a little bit. Oh, I can't stand this. What are they doing? But you remember the comfort of your friend right next to you. And you say, I'll be okay, it's okay. And they start complaining of a little pain. Here. Are you at all willing to take this on? Is it something you're willing to relieve them of? If you have to feel it. Itchy skin, little bit of runny nose, slight cough, something irritating. And if you've been brave enough to take on their small suffering, and you feel it, and it dissipates, it's done. And you look at them and they still are annoying. Even though you've just done them this kindness, they're still testing your patience to the utmost. And now they just burned themselves on the stove. Real pain, suffering right in front of you. And what's your reaction? Are you going to comfort them from afar? Turn around and walk away? Call 911, or are you going to internally offer to take on their suffering and allow them to not have it? It's your choice. No judgment, just knowing yourself. And whichever way it went, their pain is gone. They've been relieved of their suffering, and you are relieved of any experience of their suffering that you took on. And you don't invite them, you don't necessarily invite them to sit next to you, but if you do, they're to your right. And in front of you is a person that you've never met. You don't know who they are. You kind of got this, your friend told you about somebody across town that just stubbed their toe or lost their wallet or had someone steal their credit card. Would you be willing to have that happen to you instead of them? You don't know who they are. You don't know if they're your enemy. You don't know if they're your friend. You don't really know anything about them except that they're suffering. Are you willing to take on this inconvenience, this little bit of suffering, so that they don't suffer? Or are you going to say, there's nothing I can really do? I don't know them. And that small inconvenience is done and they're happy again, and your friend reports. Now something major is happening. They don't have a home. They have to move. There's been a fire, something big. Would you be willing to have something burn down around you instead of their house burning down around you? Or would you prefer to send a check to the Red Cross? Distance yourself. Stay anonymous. No judgment, just self-knowledge. What would you prefer? Your total choice. How does it feel to take on the suffering of someone you don't know? Compare that feeling to the suffering you took on from your friend. And if you did, compare that to the suffering you took on from the person that challenges you. So when you say goodbye to this exercise and come back to yourself, and you're sitting on the cushion and you haven't gotten out of this mental state quite yet, just ask one question. What's the real difference between the person I'm holding dear, the person that really annoys me, and the person I don't know anything about? What's the difference? Or what's the similarity? And then come back to our common space, and let's just talk about a little bit about when we say things about holding someone dear who is our friend, and we talk about things that we value and love and admire in them. And then we compare that to our experience of holding our unknown person as almost equivalent to that dear one, or even the person that really totally annoys us as the beneficiary of our taking of their suffering. What is it that we gain from each of these people when we do this exercise? Which of these did you feel like you worked the hardest and then gained the most from that exercise? Was it the person that you already held dear? Was it the person that you barely knew anything about? Or was it the person that, even though you had difficulty being in their presence, you were contemplating, imagining taking on a little bit of their suffering, or relieving them of something? Which one honestly brings you the most benefit? Or was there no difference, really? Any comments? Sharing?
Yeah, the most challenging one.
What do you want to say any more, or is that all you want to say?
I think because it requires more effort to open the heart, to open the heart honestly, and and take that person's suffering, and then the person kind of transforms and then becomes kind of like my friend. So kind of like that. Once I take their suffering, those are the parts that annoy me. I take the parts that annoy me onto myself, and then they no longer annoy me.
Oh.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Huh?
It's a pretty amazing process if you think about it. All you have to do is imagine taking their suffering and they become your friend. That's pretty great.
Yeah, it is. It's very nice, actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Anyone else? One more from Susan?
No, I'm good for now. Thanks.
So we're gonna we're going to look at other ways in which the most challenging people are the ones that bring us benefit. But we just took this one slice of this perspective to experience it a little bit. I don't know if it was the same for everyone, but this type of exercise where we imagine taking on a little bit has an effect on the mind. So when we sit on a cushion and we are in a safe environment and we're not actually exposed to these triggers for our emotional states and don't have any safety issues around these people because they're not actually there. This process of reframing how we are in their presence just through imagination is quite powerful. And when you do it repeatedly, it becomes the basis for transforming the mind in a very wonderful way. So we'll come back to Tonglen and go into more aspects of it as we go through this process. I'm reading the chat a little bit, and I guess I've missed a few things. Sorry about that. So what we're going to do is wrap up what we've been doing tonight. We are close to the end, but I wanted to make sure that if anybody had any questions or concerns or something they wanted to mention that you would like me to address next time, now would be a really good time to ask those questions. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it. Everybody's feeling comfortable and happy? Tired, maybe. So it's been a long day for everybody. Huh? Okay, so as I mentioned in the beginning, what we do at the end is to do a dedication. So I think rather than push things to the very last minute here, we will go ahead and I'd like to do a little bit of an informal one before we do the formal one. So just give an extra minute here. So we are living in a world that has a lot of problems. We all can find problems very easily in our own experience. We can see them in all of our dear ones suffering, having obstacles to what they want to do, having difficulties or problems or challenges to face. There are many problems in the world in terms of interacting through social and political structures that we have in place. There are problems in the climate. We have a plethora of problems. There's no end to them, it appears. And yet how we approach them, how we train our mind to work with what we have in front of us brings a sense of releasing of the problem and into the happiness that we can feel in ourselves, but also that brings a bit of lightness to others, like that person that someone held dear, who brought laughter and love and changed the energy in the room. So if we can be that for others through this investigation and experimentation on how we can transform our problems into happiness, that is our intention, our purpose, to actually bring more light and love and joy into the world. So we are doing it with the thought of benefiting others. And traditionally, we say a dedication at the end of each class, and that seals the energy, wraps it up like a package, and sends it to our intended destination. So our intended destination is to develop bodhicitta. So we say these prayers in English, we can say together. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And in our tradition, we also spend a little bit of time at the very end remembering those individual teachers and the collection of teachers in our personal lives who have brought us these precious teachings, these ideas that have the capacity, the potential to transform our very deepest parts of our mind, our hearts, our emotions, our problems, our difficulties. They're our guides and our refuge when we need them. So we acknowledge that by these prayers to Lama Zopa Rinpoche and His Holiness the Dalai Lama and others. But whoever is in your heart as a teacher or has brought you this type of benefit is suitable to hold in your heart during this verse. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serves as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels, savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. It's very important to request teachers to live long and to have the energy and stable life to teach the Dharma so that it continues. And so for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Venerable One, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors, for those wanderers in far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us and intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, we make this request. O Lama, please, please live long. Beloved teacher, leading your students toward wisdom and compassion, explaining through exacting discernment the steps of the graduated path. You are the unequaled guide. Please live a long and stable life. Geshe Tupten Sharp, our resident Geshe here at Tupten Dharma Garden. Thank you so much, everyone. And I'm still here for 3 minutes if you want to ask me anything. I'm afraid I didn't provide you with enough to ask many questions. So I hope you all have a good week. And if you want to practice taking the suffering of others, do so using wisdom so that you are not. Well, I had Yangtze Rinpoche one time. I went to Yangtze Rinpoche and I said, Rinpoche, you know, and Yangtze Rinpoche is a student of His Holiness and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and others. I said, Rinpoche, I take on the pains of others and then I'm stuck with all this pain and I'm afraid to take on this pain. And he said, oh, well, then you have to remember impermanence and also emptiness. You're not there to take on their pain. You don't exist in that way. It's not an inherent existence. He didn't use those words. I'm mashing it all to pieces, but remember to do it with wisdom, realizing that yourself is not a permanent fixed entity, and therefore the pains are not yours permanently and fixed in your entity. Somehow when he said it, it worked. When I'm saying it, I'm sure it's not helping anyone, but his words may come through somehow and help you with that. The practice is not intended to create a situation where you are in such excruciating pain that you can't do anything else, at least, not permanently, right? So if you have that experience briefly and then it passes, that's fine, but it's not. The intention is to take, but it's not yours, so you don't have to hold on to it either. Right? So make sure you let it go. If you take someone's pain, it's not yours, so don't hold on to it. Then you let it go too. But you can actually practice this to the point of taking other people's pain away and releasing it yourself, and not and then no one has the pain. So that's good. That's the hope, right? So have a wonderful week. Any questions? Go ahead, and otherwise, lovely to see you. Hi, Nancy. I see you now.
Elizabeth wants to say thank you so much, Rachel. A very nourishing class. And I have to agree with her.
Oh, thank you.
And Rachel, I also agree. Thank you so much. Thank
Oh,
you.